Hello, welcome to this video. This is part one of a tutorial series on Claude Debussy's very beloved Sunken Cathedral, or the Engulfed Cathedral, Prelude number 10 from his first book of Preludes. Before I start, I just want to mention that the whole entire piece is available in the super slow from an overhead view where I try to play at about half speed. It's already pretty slow, so it's going to be really slow at half speed, but that gives you the chance to view fingerings and other technical issues that I may not get into in these tutorial series. So all you have to do is go to super slow and then modern. I believe it's under modern, and then it should be under it should be there that other Debussy videos and other modern super slow videos should be there. So I encourage you to view the super slow video at the same time as you're viewing this tutorial series in order to gain a complete picture of the piece. So you have the overhead view where I'm not talking to get fingerings and other technical issues, and then you have these videos here. I believe I have 5 videos planned for this series, but it may change because this is the first video. Anyway, this is part 1. So let's get down to business here. I use this book here, published by Durand, Claude Debussy Preludes, Book 1. I've had this ever since college, so I've had this for a very long time. And I've played out of this for a long time. I've played many of his preludes. I haven't played all of them necessarily, but I have for you, for our purposes, a free PDF of the Peters edition, which I think is very good. One reason it's good is it has numbered measures. So if you have the Durand edition, they don't have measure numbers. Please number your measures. It's the very first thing you should do, because I'm going to refer to measure numbers in this tutorial series. So one thing I like about the Peters is they have numbered measures. Another thing is they have a few fingerings on here, not a whole lot, but it is a good clean edition, and it is free on IMSLP. So I'm providing this for you. I am personally playing from my Durand edition, but I suggest that if you don't have an edition already of it, to download this Peters edition, which is fine. You can also go to IMSLP and use this if you'd like. So it really doesn't matter. But make sure you do get a good edition, not just some cheap, free edition that someone scribbled out on the internet or something. Make sure you get a good, reputable edition like Peters or Durand or something. The Sunken Cathedral. It's a grand piece. It really is such an excellent piece. Now, in this video, I'm going to go over the first page, which is generally up to about measure 15, up through measure 15. And what Debussy uses in this is a technique known as parallelism. I think some music theorists call it planing, P-L-A-N-I-N-G, in which Debussy uses parallel chords. So he's just moving up, and you know, it's a good thing because they're easy to play. They really are easy to play. Anything that's parallel like this, especially when it's all white keys, is really not that hard. So really the thing you have to worry most about is the color you're getting. You don't have to worry so much about fingering because it's all just sort of blocked chords. So after you play this first chord here, first of all, before you start, you need the damper pedal all the way down. Then you want that all the way down. Don't change it. Damper pedal down, and then Leave the pedal down, and you just want this aura of sound like that. And for our purposes now, it doesn't matter how fast it is. Just keep a very slow, he says very calm, very slow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1. Now when you get to the third measure, you can change the pedal when you get there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you can change the pedal again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he starts with 3 series, 3 2-bar series, moving through these planing progressions that he has here, or the parallelisms here, parallel motion. It is very important that you count. It's very important that you count. It has to be strictly in time. Strictly in time. Okay? Don't mess around with rubato. Don't try to throw in your emotion to it. It has to be very steady and very objective. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, when you get to measure, I'll talk about the tempo in a few minutes, but I want to look at 5, 6, 7, measure 7. Now, I would suggest go and listen to Claude Debussy's own recording of this, because there's controversy, a big controversy and debate on the quarter notes and half notes. What Debussy does is in the printed music, he writes 6/4 equals 3/2. So it looks like in the music that if you didn't know Debussy's recording of it, you would expect the quarter note to hold the same value all the time. But the problem with that is when you get into the 3/2 in measure 7, 8, 9, and so on, in those phrases, the problem is that it becomes way too slow. It becomes excruciatingly slow, especially if you take quarter notes in the beginning slow. So what Debussy does is he actually doubles the time. He like goes twice as fast as what it looks like on the page for the 3/2, and it's a very good musical effect to do that. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is Debussy plays it differently than the way it's written in the music, differently than the way it's published. And I don't know what the reason for that was. Perhaps he forgot to put like quarter note equals half note here. I don't know what the reason is. No one really knows for certain what the reason is. But I think it's safe to assume that Debussy knew what he was doing when he recorded it. And so all the people that record it according to the way it's notated I think are incorrect. I think Debussy knew what he was doing. Now, I do think Debussy's tempo is maybe a tad too fast. I mean, that's his own interpretation. So what I've done in my interpretation and the way that I'm teaching it to you here is that I suggest a slightly slower speed than Debussy's speed, but to retain the tempo relationships that Debussy has in his own recording. So, putting that into practice, look at measure 5. Okay, I'm going to play measure 5 now with counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, another thing he does in his recording is in measure 6 and 7, you have a bunch of these ties. So you have tied notes here. And I really listen to his recording carefully, and it's the way that I do it. It's easiest if you just do this. From measure 5, if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, tie, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then it starts on the melody, on the second half note beat of measure 7. So what I would suggest to do is the easiest thing to do is just count to 3 2 times, and then you're on your half note beat. Then that beat, the way we're playing it, becomes a half note in measure 7. So now let's start now from the second half note beat of measure 7. Ready, go. Okay, that beat there is the quarter note beat at the beginning. It's the same beat as the half note beat starting in measure 7. One, two, three, tie, 2, 3. Okay, just a couple other things. I point this out in the text below my performance on YouTube of this. In measure 8, okay, Debussy also ties this octave E in the right hand from measure 7 to measure 8. He ties it. If you listen carefully, he doesn't replay that E. And I think it's a good idea because it sounds better that way, in my opinion. I think he just forgot a tie, quite honestly. I think there should be a tie there. So if you start from the second beat of measure 7, you have 2, 3, tie. Otherwise, it sounds like this. It doesn't sound right. It just doesn't sound right when you replay that E. Everyone plays it that way. It doesn't seem like anybody really cares what how the composer interpreted his own piece. I suggest everyone who studies this to go and listen to Debussy play his own piece. Then you'll discover some things, like there's a tie going into measure 8. If I were to make an addition of this, I would add a tie there, because it makes more musical sense. So you have, in the second beat of measure 7, you have tie. It sounds much better that way. Now you have another tie. And I got to measure 13. Make sure when you have those ties on the third beat, on the third half note beat, that you give that a little emphasis, because that's sort of like, almost like a syncopation. You want to give that a little more emphasis. Now, another thing Debussy does in his recording, which I think is better than the printed page, is in measure 13. In measure 13, it's written like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. If the half note beat goes like this, it's written with only 4 half note beats. So the way it's written is 1, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Then you're in measure 14. It just doesn't make any musical sense. And it doesn't make sense because Debussy doesn't play it that way in his own recording. He actually does this. He adds another B in the tenor. So in measure 13, he does this. For the half note beat, it goes like this. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1. So you have 6 half note beats, not just 4 half note beats. It's much better that way because it stays consistent, because every measure so far has had 6 beats in it. So either 6 quarter note beats when it's 6/4, or 3 half note beats if it's in 3/2. But it doesn't make any sense to have 4, and it doesn't make sense because Debussy didn't play it that way. So that's another thing that I would change if I were to make an addition of this. I would change measure 13 to 6/2, 6/2 time. So let's play now from measure 11. Okay, measure 11. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then it goes on, and it picks up speed a little bit in measure 16. That will be the topic of the next video, part 2. But I think that in measure 16, even though Debussy doesn't really speed up much, he pretty much keeps a consistent tempo from page 1 to page 2. I think it's better if it's just a tad slower for the first page, and just a little faster when it goes into that part. That's the part when the cathedral is emerging, or it's like emerging out of the fog or something. So I think that's a good place to just pick up the speed a little bit. Now, in terms of the actual tempo, Debussy plays almost exactly 63 beats per minute in his recording. So I'm going to put it on 63. He plays this. Which is pretty good. Then when he gets to page 2, he pretty much continues that speed. He doesn't really speed up much, but like that. I think that's a good speed for the second page. I personally prefer the first page just a tad slower, like in the 50s. So when I recorded this, I tried to play 54. I tried to play as close as I could to 54. So this is what 54 sounds like. It has a more mysterious character to it, I think. So here's 54. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now listen. See how it speeds up a little bit. It sort of wants to do that automatically. It's really hard not to do that. So then if you play the first page a little slower than the second page, it enhances the quality of the second page when you speed up just a tiny bit. It's not a lot. It's not really noticeable, but it does. There is perceptibly a faster speed when it goes into this. So that will be the topic of the next video, part 2. But here's what I suggest you do to get a good foundation for this piece in the first page, the first 15 measures, is do practice with a metronome. Okay? A lot of pianists and teachers will tell you, they'll tell you, don't worry about the metronome with Debussy. It sounds too mechanical. Nothing could be further from the truth. This sounds really musical, very musical, when it's done exactly in time. You don't have to make it sound mechanical, but it does have to have it has to have a steady beat. Debussy modeled this after medieval music. Medieval music had a steady beat. So you do want a steady beat. I would suggest practicing with a metronome the first page. I would suggest, my preferred tempo is 54 beats per minute, 54 for the quarter notes, and then 54 for the half notes when it goes into 3/2. I think it's a perfect speed for it. Some people do it faster, but the people that do it faster are the ones that play it the other way. They retain the same speed of the quarter notes even when they get to the 3/2 time. And regardless, the 3/2 time always sounds too slow when you do it that way. Like, for instance, the way Michelangelo or Richter do it, which in my opinion is not right, because the right way, the right tempo relationships between the 6/4 and the 3/2 are the way that Debussy did it. He was the composer. He knew what he wanted, and that's what he did in his recording. But like I said, it's okay to disagree with Debussy's general tempo. I think it could be slowed down just a tad, but the relationships between 6/4 and 3/2, I think, are solid. It's a solid case that they need to be that way because Debussy played it that way. So do practice this first page diligently, learn it well, and then we'll move on to part 2 starting in measure 16. Until we meet again.